Airdrie versus Raith Rovers has not been a fixture for fans of free-scoring football, and so it proved once again yesterday as the two teams played out a 0-0 draw. Danny Lennon's side started the day bottom of the table, a point lifted them above stragglers Ross County, whereas Rovers maintained their second place position, albeit losing ground to St Johnstone, who continue to race away at the top. This is the Oh No 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 podcast. I am Duncan Cameron, and with me today to reflect on a game that was full of endeavour, but somewhat lacking in quality, it is Blair Hopcroft. How are you, Blair?
I'm alright, mate. I can't honestly say I've enjoyed a game of football less than what I enjoyed yesterday for quite some time. That first half in particular. It's about as much as I've not enjoyed a game of football for a good while. And I think that word quality is going to get used a lot today.
Yeah, it was a funny one in the sense that, I mean, as far as 0-0 draws go, it wasn't like a kind of bogged down in midfield type game. I'm not sure there was any midfields really, for the most part.
Pass them by.
You know, it wasn't one where you look at the highlights and you're like, oh, you know, Ian's done well to get 8 minutes out of this. Like, there was enough stuff going on, just not a lot of it that was really
good.
Yeah, coherent and kind of deliberate, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah, we might be scrapping for bits and pieces to talk about through this one. Setting aside the process then, having had a chance to kind of sleep on it, having watched the highlights back, how do you kind of look back on that overall? Is that a good point, all said and done?
No, not for me. I mean, it's it's a good point in the sense that we didn't get one at Airdrie last season or the season before, I think, actually. We just basically haven't done well against Airdrie for a couple of years. We were talking about it in the pre-match, like, I was really hoping that was going to be a Rhys McCabe thing. Like, he was gone, fresh start, Danny Lennon's come in, we can pump them. Everything's great, we're gonna have a great time. And nah, it just didn't happen. It was like I said before, it was a game where I said in the pre-match, like, if we've genuinely got aspirations of being up and around the top 2 or 3, you know, not making the playoffs, which I think has definitely got to be our goal for this season. I don't think anybody's in doubt about that, but not just scraping fourth or getting it in the last week of the season, but that actually being a genuine part of the playoff kind of group, and kind of holding our own up there. That yesterday's a game we've got to be winning, and I think there'll be a lot of. I mean, as I always say, I don't do the Pine Bovril kind of side of things, so I'm not entirely sure what the general consensus of the screaming minority is, but I'm presuming there'll be a lot of criticism again for Barry Robson, and I think setup was fine. I think, you know, in terms of the way we played, basically fine, but just nothing worked. Nothing came off. A real poor game, and actually feel really sorry for anyone, like a radio reporter that's a neutral that was forced to watch that yesterday. Like, it was pretty bad.
It's good to know where we're going to disagree nice and early.
Good.
I do kind of think Barry Robson's got a case to answer for with that yesterday, in quite a specific manner. So, I'd said previously that when we get beat by Thistle and when we get beat by St Johnstone, neither of them I was particularly bothered by.
Yeah.
You know, I wasn't like, you know, kicking the seat in front of me or anything, because I could see what we were trying to do and how we went about it, and ultimately the opposition were very good in some elements, and it's football and these things sometimes go for you, sometimes go against you, and I thought, broadly, I think it's fine. My issue yesterday is I don't think Airdrie were very good at all. And I don't think Airdrie are very good at all. And maybe Danny Lennon is going to improve them over the course of the season. But it felt, I don't know, I feel like we didn't. You know, sometimes you hear this where it's like you didn't show the opposition enough respect, or you showed the opposition too much respect. I feel like we didn't show ourselves enough respect.
Yeah, I'd agree.
I mean, when you look at those two sides, and I know like Airdrie have got players missing, and this is not me having a go at Airdrie by any means at all. That's not the point. But I think you look at those two sides that started the game. There's more quality in the Rovers side, and I don't think we really did enough to sort of take advantage of it. Like last week, for example, when we get beat by St Johnstone, we better talk about being quite direct, and I thought it was justified because of how strong St Johnstone are in the midfield.
Yeah, definitely.
So actually, Jason Holt's a really, really good kind of destructive midfielder, and Rhys McAlear's doing a great job of being that like one stage further forward.
That link up, aye.
Exactly. And then they've got runners going off them, so it's like actually makes sense. Rather than trying to build through the middle, if you can bypass that and get onto their defence, that's a good idea. Airdrie don't have that. They don't, certainly not to the same quality, but I felt like we just kind of did the same thing again. And I mean, you said yourself, like the opening kind of half hour, it felt to me like the whole plan was playing for Paul McMullen running off Jack Hamilton. Just playing these long balls up, win your headers, which to be fair, Jack Hamilton did win his headers in that first half hour. Didn't really get us anywhere. And I just felt like it was a bit of a numbers game, a bit of a if we do this 10 times it'll work once, rather than anything else. I mean, how were you? Did you think that's how we would set up? Were you in any way kind of surprised by that opening period?
Yeah, but again, I'm maybe being too kind to Barry Robson, but for me, the way it broke down was genuinely in the quality. Like I said in the pre-match, I'd have went 4 at the back, I'd have went kind of 4-2-3-1 type style. Yeah. And I think the joy we would have got was McMullen out wide, Easton coming in off the left, and Vaughan buzzing in and around Jack Hamilton. And actually, those second balls coming down, you've got a kind of a chance, and you've got somebody to aim at for crosses. We kind of talked through that, and I still think that would have been how I would have went. But I think the changes he made, at least on paper, made a lot of sense. So he's gone with J-Ro, he's gone with Wilson. So he's obviously thinking bit of pace, bit of youth, bit of enthusiasm kind of out wide, that there's a bit of joy we can have there. If you watched the Partick Airdrie game the week before, they did a really good job actually at cancelling out the wingers. So maybe doing that 10, 15 yards deeper, there's a bit of sense in that. He brought Jack Hamilton back in because we have lacked a bit of a focal point. So I'm kind of looking at the subs and I'm thinking, they're not the ones I would have made, or the changes, sorry, they're not the ones I would have made, but I can rationalise everything. I can kind of get what he's, or at least what I think he's trying to do. But the real lack of quality from the off was missed touches, getting caught on the ball, overhit crosses, underhit passes, first touches like a punch in the face at times. It was just, there was so much in that game where you're going, I'm not sure how much of that lands at Barry Robson and how much of that is just actually players, for whatever reason, not working, not turning up. And that was the bit that really frustrated me. The amount of times that you're trying to play a 10-yard pass and it was short. I mean, the pitch looked fine. It didn't look dry. There was a bit of rain, so the ball seemed to be kind of zipping about. You know, like we talked about, it was Morton, wasn't it, with the really long grassy pitch, and Capello, and it was really, really slow, and actually he was forced into going direct. And that's what it felt like but I couldn't rationalise it. Like, it felt like we can't play on this surface. We're going to chip the ball a bit further forward. We're going to win those second balls, and we're going to play that 40, 50 yards further up the park. I just didn't get why. And the only thing I could rationalise on it is either, like you say, it is a genuine decision that he's made, which he deserves criticism for if that's what it is, or it just wasn't working. Because it just wasn't.
I think it has to be a deliberate decision at this point. Because we've been kind of rationalising it for the last few weeks, but it's been a different rationale.
Totally.
At a certain point, that's just how you play. And yesterday was the opportunity to not do it, basically.
Fair.
As you say, so he kind of made that choice to go back to the back three, and then, well, I suppose sort of swapped his wing backs, or certainly went for different wing back options. So we had J-Rowe on the right and Ewan Wilson for the very first time on the left. What did you think about those two, performance-wise?
Honestly, I thought they were fine. I don't think... I'm not watching that game going, oh man, we've uncovered a couple of gems here. But I'm also not, I've one of the I personally, for me, they're still not, either of them are not first choice. And so, are they adequate backups? Are they adequate kind of squad players to have? Yes. Am I rushing to have them starting every game? I've got to be honest, no. I thought J-Rowe did a lot better than I've seen in the past. And I've said before, it was a really small kind of sample size. But I'd been quite honest about the fact I've been quite disappointed with some of what he'd done. I thought he was fine yesterday. I thought he did okay. He just looks... And actually, I think it's a criticism you can level at both of them. They look so frightened to go forward. I don't know what that is, but there's just no kind of... They're both quick, or they both look quick. There's just no willingness to kind of get the head down and run with the ball. Wilson, frustratingly, I have to say. The amount of times he had space on the left and Cruyff turned back in and played the ball back into the centre midfield. I'm like, come on, son, you've got to make a break or cross from deep, or like it was poor. Yeah,
that I think was the bigger issue for me. I think of the two of them, J-Rowe seemed to start like a house on fire.
Really high.
First 5 minutes, gets Strap booked, and then Strap ends up, with his head bandaged as well.
Yep.
And then we seem to just stop. Stop doing that.
He just disappeared out of the game completely.
Whether that was an adjustment from Airdrie or what, I don't know. But the second half in particular, I thought you could see, really for kind of the first time, it was like, oh, there's a bit of football in a part of the pitch here for the Rovers. When you had Chin on the right wing, Rowe as the wing back, and then Doherty pushing on with him.
Yeah.
You think these guys are all really good at that. That's a really good flank. And it looked like if anything was going to come from it, it was going to come from there. Wilson, to me, looked like a left-back who was being asked to play further forward than he's comfortable.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Just that, as you say, that kind of safety first, not quite stepping up as far as he could, and then not kind of opening his body as he receives the ball. His first thought isn't going down the line. It's, I'm going to take a safe touch and then look for a pass. But the only pass he's going to get down the line is going to be if Jack Hamilton's gone down there for some reason in that first half, which he's never going to do.
And even if he does it, we're back in that same position where he looks up and who's he crossing it to, because it's meant to be him that's in the middle. Yeah,
that's it. That's where I think a lot of the kind of football fell down, because without Sean Byrne, we're not really kind of passing the ball through the middle.
Agreed.
We're passing the ball in the middle quite a lot, but it's not quite triangles. It's not quick enough really to be triangles, but there's a lot of Fordyce, Matthews, Brown, Hanlon.
Yeah.
Moving the ball and not moving the opposition. And really, I think that's when you've got your wing backs there, you need them to really be pushing on. But then what you also need is the passes to go into them. And we never quite had that either. A couple of times Hanlon,
I don't know if
thought... On you go.
No, go on, sorry, go on.
I was saying a couple of times I thought Hanlon had the kind of opportunity to really kind of basically force Wilson onto his toes. Just stick the ball 3 yards in front of him, force him to run onto it. And he chose not to. And whether that's a lack of familiarity or whether he knows Wilson doesn't want that.
Yeah, maybe. I kind of wonder with that whole setup, that moving the ball slowly in the midfield, when you're away from home, it can work. But what you're relying on is the home team to actually have the onus of coming out at you because they're at home and they're meant to be dictating play. What we saw yesterday was an Airdrie team who were quite happy to have 10 men behind the ball at all times. They started the game with a point and they were more than happy to finish that game with a point. Yeah. And that's not to say that they didn't try and attack. They did. But it was all counter press. It was all kind of transitional stuff. There was no onus on them. They were not coming out at us. And so what we did was we'd get the ball and you play the ball into the midfield and you've maybe got 2 or 3 forwards from Airdrie who are behind the play at this point. But by the time we've taken 2 or 3 touches and made 2 or 3 passes sideways, you've got 10 men behind the ball again. And all of a sudden, you're right back at square one of how do we break down 10 men. I mentioned there was one game I mentioned a lot yesterday when I was sitting, my mate Andy, I was sitting next to. I was like, this is like Queen's Park all over again. That first game of the season when they were 1-0 up and they just sat and we had no idea how to break them down. And it really worries me that we're genuinely at a place where we can go into games and we might be hard. I actually think we're going to be quite a hard team to score against for a lot of teams. But I think we're quite easy to stop. Just sitting. I mean, St Johnstone did it last week. They went 1 up and then they just, not massively defensively, but they just sat in and stopped us.
And I think the slightly concerning thing for me is I think that's the kind of game that suits us better. I don't think we're not because we don't have the players to do it, but in terms of like that, yesterday, I don't think a 0-0 was a surprise after the first half hour. I think this looks like a 0-0 because we don't have a sort of proactive strategy. Yeah. And we were saying this as early as the kind of League Cup group. I mean, to be fair, there was a lot of it last season as well, where the primary tactic is robbing the ball off the opposition within 30 yards of their goal and then running in and scoring. And if the opposition just don't take chances, which is Queen's Park didn't do this at all, Airdrie were caught a couple of times in their midfield rather than their back line and ultimately kind of got away with it. We don't have, we almost need the opposition to start with the ball. We don't really have a proactive sort of, well, we've got it, so we are now going to kind of build through. That's a concern because I don't think I think we've got better players than that.
Yeah.
We've got the players to do it, but
so laboured.
Yeah. And it's just, as you say, it's very easy to counter.
Yeah.
Don't take chances. Don't do what your man Chillicoe Mullen did in that derby, which is don't try and dribble past Dylan Easton. And you'll probably be fine, broadly. Yeah. Which is not to say, listen, obviously over the course of the game, it's not to say that we didn't have chances and we didn't.
Oh, we did. That's where the quality comes back in.
Well, this is it, and it's not that this is a game that had no shots in the game or whatever, but I think a team with more self-assuredness creates better chances or controls that game is maybe a better way to put it. I don't think we controlled the game, and I don't think we tried to control the game. I think we went out to play this kind of rock'em sock'em robots, fast-paced, run in, rob the ball, get in, and it's I don't know. I don't think it was the right strategy for the game, and it increasingly feels like it's the only strategy we've got.
Yeah, I agree to an extent. I think where I'm coming at it in terms of defending Robson slightly is that when you look at that game, particularly in the first half, Like, did we have enough chances to score a goal or two? Yeah. So the idea that it absolutely was not the right tactic. I get it's probably not the best tactic, but it worked enough for me to warrant us having a couple of decent chances. And then you're watching that first half, and I sat and I said to my mate, like, after about 30, 35 minutes, I'm like, this game is screaming out for Richard Chin. Like, it's absolutely screaming out for a bit of pace to get them on the turn. And he makes that change at half time. I also think how quickly we came out from half time, they've had an absolute bollocking at half time from him. And this is what I mean. I don't think what we saw yesterday was necessarily the game plan laid out that he wanted to play. And I'm maybe being really generous there, but I do feel like he's given them an absolute bollocking and sent them out really quickly, and made the change that I thought the game was crying out for. But it was poor.
I know what you mean. We did have chances in that first half. I don't think they were necessarily any better than Airdrie's chances in the first half, though.
No, maybe that's fair.
And when you look at, I mean, it's not a great example. I'm thinking specifically of 3 chances in the first half. And they're all the same. They all come from, mistakes effectively in the middle. Yep. So there's 2 for us and 1 for them. So one, I mean, it's not really a mistake. It's Matthews slides in on kind of Jamie Barjonas to pop the ball through to Jack Hamilton. At the time, I thought this was a good tackle. Actually, looking at the reverse angle on the highlights, I don't think he's ever anywhere near the ball. It's still, on the main angle, looks great. But when you see it across, he's on the wrong side. So, I mean, that doesn't really go down as a chance at all. But what it is it's an example of our route to goal.
Yeah.
You know, this is a thing I bang on about all the time. Like, if you go to the manager before the game and say, right, how are you going to score goals today? That's number 1 on our board, is dispossess the opposition. And that's what Matthews, if he doesn't foul Barjonas, that's what he's trying to do. And it's then Hamilton then has a chance. So he puts the ball in the net. The keeper had stopped. But you've got that one. You've then got the kind of Hamilton fresh air swipe, which, let's come back to that element of it in a second. But in terms of where this comes from, it's a couple of nice little passes in the midfield. Then as it goes through to McMullen, it's actually a tackle. The defender trying to take the ball off McMullen that plays the ball in to Hamilton, who then misses it. Which I say I want to kind of come back to that. And then the last one is the Airdrie chance, where Scott Brown is just on his heels in the middle of the park and just gets kind of caught in possession and they race away. I guess, I mean, though, it's just like... You're just like letting the game be that kind of end-to-end scrappy. I just think it's a better team, or a team with a better plan, goes to Airdrie yesterday and doesn't have that. You know, obviously we very easily could have lost that game in the last minute. Very, very easily.
Yeah.
And I think a team, to your point from earlier on, a team that finishes second or third in this league has to be able to put that game to bed.
Yeah.
Like, relatively comfortably.
Yeah.
But yeah, as I say, that Hamilton miss, is that just rustiness?
I keep saying it's rustiness. And in his defence, it has to be. I mean, he's not playing. Do you know what I mean? He's been getting kind of 20 minutes here and there at the end of games. And this was his first start in, I don't even know how long. It's a good while. And he's played, I mean, what's he played? 70 minutes. It's just really poor. Like, and there's nobody, like, there's no way Jack Hamilton's gone off that pitch yesterday thinking, well, that was a stellar performance. I really enjoyed myself out there. Like, you're not, like, do you know what I mean? There's folk in the crowd that are screaming and shouting at him, and I'm like, you're not doing anything here. Like, he knows fine well. He's not gone off the pitch thinking that was wonderful. But I think the criticism's fair. When there was one or two that his first touch, it's actually the most frustrating thing about him, because, you know, for his stature and his size and the position that he plays, he's either got to be like a proper penalty box poacher, right? Or he's got to be able to hold the ball up. He's got to have good hold-up play. And he can. There are times, and we've seen it, where, I mean, there was a game, was it in the League Cup, actually, the one where he chests it down to Easton, and Easton buries the ball in the bottom corner with the left foot. Was it Inverness, maybe? But he's got that in his locker. So whether it's just a lack of game time that's preventing him from being able to do that well, but I just think his inability to take the ball comes into him and it spurns away from him more often than it gets held in. And it's really frustrating because it's that avenue to goal that just isn't there. And I think that's what I was getting at with the quality. Like, even we talked about the Scott Brown one in the midfield. Scott Brown's absolutely on his heels, but the pass is short as well. Like, it's all round, it's really poor, the whole thing. Do you know what I mean? And it's just, there was a real lack of quality yesterday, and Jack Hamilton was unfortunately the poster child for it because of the position he plays in. The ball came to him, and you're expecting him to do something with it. I mean, to be fair to him, he also had a really good shot on goal, but it was right at the goalie. Do you know the one where he absolutely drives it? But I don't know.
I think the goalkeeper spilling that makes it look better than it is, to be fair.
Probably,
it's very central. It's not, there's no height on it. It's
good bit of power through it, though. Like, in terms of the keeper clearly wasn't comfortable. But again, that's the bit, what have we been really good at? Like you said before, that dispossessing them in that final third and that harrying them and stuff. No one's following that in. He hits that shot from distance. There's two in front of him, and neither of them are anywhere near the goalkeeper when he palms it back out into play. I'm like, there was something missing yesterday.
Yeah. I mean, listen, this is really harsh, and I recognise that, but I thought Jack Hamilton yesterday, there was shades of when you stick a centre-half up front for the last 5 minutes because you're getting beat. Like, he won his headers, and he was a nuisance, but he was a nuisance kind of by his presence more than actually anything that he was kind of doing in an attacking sense. And actually, that is harsh. It's obviously not quite as bad as that. And that's very much as a yesterday. That's not as an overall observation. But it felt to me like we almost got our strikers round the wrong way for the way that we played as well. Now, Robson says after the game that he was very keen to get Vaughan a rest. Played a lot of football recently, which makes perfect sense. But the pattern of the game, and you don't know how this is going to go. If we score 5 minutes in, it's a different game. But by the time Hamilton goes off and Vaughan comes on, we'd effectively reverted entirely to just banging balls into the box, either directly from Josh Ray or kind of working it down that right-hand side and then trying to... Well, I think there was maybe too much attention paid to Jamie Gullen's assist on Friday night. So maybe if we just overhit every cross from this side, someone will follow it into the back post.
Yeah, no one will, though. No one will be there.
Yeah, but so I mean that first half, as we said, just really, really scrappy. No real incisiveness in sense of a kind of a route to goal. Like, we always look relatively dangerous. There's like a baseline level of threat there because of the quality of the players that we've got. But again, I suppose this is my kind of thesis point for today. It feels like we're kind of banking on that. Like, if we just stay in the game long enough, Dylan Easton will win a penalty. Kind of that kind of feel to it.
It is exactly the same as Queen's Park, though. It was exactly the same thing then. It was, don't worry, don't panic. We just keep doing what we're doing, and eventually it will work. But there is a clock. Like, if the time does run out. And it just felt like yesterday you could have played for another half an hour and never scored.
I mean, as you say, we get the change at half time. Now, again, I thought this was a good change. I think the big thing that Richard Chin comes on for Paul McMullen. The one thing that you know you're going to get Richard Chin is he's going to try and run with the ball, which I thought we completely just did not do.
Didn't
in
do
that first
at
half.
all.
Particularly, I think that's bad when you've got wing backs.
Mm-hmm.
There needs to be an element of that. And I don't think they got the passes. This is not me laying that entirely at the feet of Rowe and Wilson, but Chin did change the game in that sense. He gave us that kind of slightly different angle, but I didn't feel like it really changed the tone of the game as such. It was almost like it was the right change at the right time. It just didn't make a huge amount of difference, really.
Yeah. Just up the chaos factor, because he is just chaos. He's so unpredictable, like to the point where, and I don't want to be harsh, I'm not entirely sure he knows what he's trying to do sometimes as well. Like, he is so chaotic and so quick in a good way, but it just didn't. They were so deep that the likelihood of him having any kind of joy wasn't really there, unfortunately. But
so the rest, I mean, really the second half, in terms of the way that it plays out, Barry Robson describes this in an interview as we were peppering their goal, which I actually quite like as a description. I think it's quite fitting, because there's an element of like fruitlessness about it.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I suppose.
You never say, like, oh, we won 4-0 because we were peppering their goal all afternoon. Like, you pepper their goal, that brings to mind, like, quite timid kind of
it's a shotgun
shots
blast.
at the goalkeeper's arms
there's
or whatever.
bits everywhere.
Yeah, like, just... But then that's what it was. Like, there's actually quite a lot of chances in this second half, but they're all so, like, scrappy and bitty, with maybe one exception. It's balls popping around the box and bobbling around, and then it gets through. And I mean, absolutely, like the Barry Robson argument for this, you would be looking at the number. I think there's 3 clearances off the line, kind of ish. Certainly 3 shots that are put away by a defender rather than the goalkeeper. I'm like, maybe I'm just crab at it, but it didn't feel like, you know what I think the next step up from peppering the goal is? Knocking on the door. I think we were knocking on the door. I think we were peppering the goal. We never got as far as knocking on the door.
Yeah, it's true. You're not sitting there going, this is coming. This is coming.
That's it. It just didn't feel like that. No. And it didn't even feel like, kind of at Thistle, it was a bit like, oh, this isn't going to be our day. Didn't even feel like that. Didn't feel like we'd reached that threshold either. You're creating great chances and they're just not going in.
Totally.
So, I mean, there's a few of these. So there's one off the line. So Ewan Wilson arrives armed with a long throw. I don't know if anybody knew that. I didn't know that. That was a surprise to me. So first half he was just trying that from the left-hand side where he plays. Second half onto the other side of the park as well. You start to see I see how this is going. It's just going to start launching these throws into the box from the other side as well. It does create a chance. That's the first one that's kind of blocked as it's on its way in. There's some nice football kind of around the edge of the box. It's laid off to Scott Brown, who fires over the bar fairly wildly. Not one of his more stellar performances either, I would suggest.
Definitely not. Definitely not. He was one that, certainly in the pre-match, I'd said that if we were dropping one of the 3 centre midfielders, which I did think was the right thing to do, I don't think going there with 3 centre midfielders was the way to play against Airdrie away. For me, it was Brown that was coming out. Matthews, probably on paper, is the one that I would least. This is terrible, but like, if you've got your choice of 3 fully fit, everybody's firing. Matthews is probably the one that I would remove, because I think Scott Brown just offers you a bit more. But Matthews has been tremendous for weeks, and more than warranted his place in the team. Dropping Byrne, I get the we don't need to be as defensive because we're playing against Airdrie, but you and I have both said on several occasions that having that player frees up everybody else to go and do what they want to do. And it just didn't happen yesterday because he wasn't there.
Yeah, I think very much just a case of go back a few episodes and listen to what we were saying before Sean Byrne came back into the team, because it's the same arguments. It's especially in a game like that, though. It's somebody to put their foot on the ball, somebody to play these kind of nice forward passes into the feet of the forwards and out into your wing backs for them to be moving, which just didn't really didn't really achieve
No.
at any point. As we mentioned, Lewis Vaughan comes on for Jack Hamilton with about 20 minutes to play. He has a near post header. It's one of the ones that's blocked.
Yeah, from the corner.
Which again is a little bit unfortunate. That could have very easily ended up in the goal. Then probably the one big chance, or certainly I would say the most, the least scrappy maybe of all the chances. Now again, it comes from our old friend catching the opposition in possession, but Richard Chin very quickly knows exactly what he's doing, plays Louis Vaughan through on goal. Is it his first touch that lets him down here, do you think?
If it's not his first, it's definitely second. It was the least Lewis Vaughan thing I think I've ever seen. He starts off by taking the ball away from goal. So that first touch, for me, it's the wrong direction. I think he's got to be kind of pulling it towards the middle. But then the second touch is so heavy that the goalkeeper's not even... It's not like, sometimes you see those chances, and we've had them in the past, and you go, credit to the goalkeeper, by the way, because he came out and he made that really difficult. I don't think the goalkeeper deserves... And he doesn't deserve any criticism. He's so far away from it. He should never, ever have been a factor in that second touch. I mean, his second touch must be 30 yards for goal, and it's so heavy that it basically runs the best part of 10 yards. And I think at that point, Vaughan's head is, he's going to wipe me out.
Yeah.
I'm going to let him wipe me out, and I'm going to take the penalty. And so he does that thing where you've just got to touch the ball before the goalie does. You've got to just nick it away from him. But in nicking it away from him, the goalie pulls out and he just rolls it out for a goal kick. And you're going, so bad. So frustrating. But Vaughan looks frustrated. He looks really, really frustrated up there. And I don't know whether that's a lack of game time. I don't know if it's not liking the system, not liking the way that we're playing, not liking his own form. I don't know what it is, but he's not looking a happy camper at the moment.
Nah, as you say, I think you're absolutely spot on. I think by the time, once he takes that touch, he almost realises the best outcome is being fouled by the goalkeeper.
Yeah.
Because if that's even a foot shorter, he tries to chip the keeper.
Oh, aye, 100%.
Like, I don't think that's his original plan. I think he wants to take, a good touch and then have the option of, I'll decide what I'll do. I say if it's slightly shorter, I think he just tries to dink it over him. But you're absolutely right. What he's doing is making sure the ball is still in play when the goalkeeper touches him.
Yeah.
You can't just knock it away. So he just wants to take that slight touch and then let the keeper take it. And the fact that the keeper doesn't just means the chance is just gone.
Yeah.
And that, you can make an argument for one or two of the other bits and pieces in this, but that's the one chance to me that feels like proper football, if you know what I mean. Like it's like an actual... This is obviously a ridiculous thing to say because that's very much the opposite of proper football. But that's the kind of goal you would see scored in like a computer game, where it's like, oh, there's a pass and then a run and then a shot, as opposed to all our other chances in this, which is like there's no button on your controller for like bobble. The ball's in the box, bobble it. Just keep bobbling it, and it might go in. Yeah.
See, to go back to your original point though, of like the tactic is win the ball in the opposition's half and score a goal. So Vaughan takes that round the keeper and rolls that in. The tactic has worked because that's exactly what happened, and I think that's where I'm a little bit more inclined to kind of give Robson a little bit of leeway in that. It may not be the tactic we want or the tactic we deserve, but it's the tactic we're getting. And it did work to the extent of creating the chances that allowed players to be through on goal or to have those opportunities. How do you mitigate for Vaughan taking a touch like that? Like, it's just...
I mean, it definitely does work. And it has worked. When you look at the goals that we've scored this season, that's where a lot of them have come from. My problem is it feels like it's our only tactic.
Yeah, that's it.
Like the Airdrie, as we've said, for a lot of that second half were quite happy to let us have the ball. Was that maybe they weren't happy about it? That's what was happening. And so much of it was just Josh Ray banging it up the park.
Yeah.
Because that's all we've got. But I don't think we have to. I think we have really good players. We don't have to resort to that. But it's like, we can't win the ball off the opposition if we've got the ball in our own half. So it's like, just get it into the final third and see what happens. And obviously, if you get it into the final third and it goes right over the last defender and Easton can head it in the goal, brilliant. But even if you don't quite win the second ball, there's a chance for you to then, steal it off them in the third phase or whatever. It feels to me, honestly, it feels like we're doing a lot of our own players a disservice by just banging the ball up the park and seeing what happens. And I mean, parts of that second half, we're playing for headers with Lewis Vaughan. What's the point? How's this come about? And
we started crossing the ball in the second half. That was actually the most frustrating thing for me in the whole game. So we take off the 6 foot, whatever he is, striker after 70 minutes, and then we start crossing the ball more. Like Jack Hamilton, I don't think Jack Hamilton got an opportunity to attack a header. Like he won his headers, but in terms of actually attacking a header or attacking a cross ball, I don't think he got one. I don't think he got one in 70 minutes. And
there's one he has a header on target in the first half, but it's kind of headed to him by Callum Fordyce, and he does absolutely as good as anybody could with that. And
everything he can.
The keeper takes it comfortably. There's nothing like nothing he wants, put it that way.
No.
He's not getting, as you say, crosses to go and attack. But that's where, as I say, in the second half, a lot of that is coming from guys who were on the park from the start. It's Rowe and Docherty, and now it's Chin as well. But McMillan could have easily done that. But it just felt like we weren't doing that. We weren't getting those kind of opportunities. I mean, even like the other two chances I've got here, like Easton has the third one that's cleared off the line. I think is deflected. I think it's a cross that, again, he's trying to put to the back post, and the defender slightly touches it towards the goal. Yeah. And it's actually a brilliant clearance on that one, because it's a really, really difficult one. The boy's basically running into his own goal and manages to head it away. I don't know who it was. I would credit him, but the numbers are just impossible to discern on those Airdrie jerseys.
Really frustrating though was Vaughan stood and watched it. That was another one that really annoyed me in the ground on the day, because I'm like, if Vaughan just runs directly into the ball, it's going to go over the line. Like he genuinely stands off him as if he's waiting for the boy to knock it in the goal. And I'm thinking, just commit, just gamble, follow it in.
Just crash into them,
crash into him, even if it's a foul. Like, if it happens to be a foul, it's a foul. But do something. He just stood and kind of watched it. And it kind of just summed up the way that we were playing. It was like we were just waiting for the ball to go in without actually really making sure it was happening.
Aye, they're just, I mean, the one after that, the other one that's kind of, if it goes in, you could actually say, that is a real piece of quality, is Easton on his left foot, where he kind of curls it round. But this, I think, is a good example of if you weren't at the game, this is a good, from the beginning, a good kind of microcosm of the game itself. Because Josh Ray fires a ball at the park, and the two Rovers players who are under it, Richard Chin and Lou Vaughan, and they don't get near it, because obviously, why would they? But as the ball comes down, I think it's Reece Armstrong in the Airdrie midfield takes a poor touch, and Brown gets it away. And then there's a kind of second phase. It doesn't immediately kind of go straight to Easton for that chance. But that's where that came from. It wasn't like Ray's got the ball at his feet, build through the thirds and create a chance. It's just bang it forward, see what falls out, and then kind of rush and see what you can get. And it nearly works. Yeah. But it just feels very...
rolling dice, isn't it?
Kind of literally and metaphorically route one.
Yeah.
Like, it's how you would play if you were like outnumbered and outgunned. just bang it up and see what you can get. Whereas we should be good enough to actually play a bit of football from the beginning. I think the big thing with this is our back three in particular are so good. I was thinking this yesterday when there was not really much else going on. There really isn't like a kind of weak spot in there. Particularly, when we were in the the League Cup and there was a bit of kind of hand wringing and everything going on. They've really grown into it. Paul Hanlon is, I think, almost underrated with the ball at his feet. And he's such a good defender. You think, he can't be that good with the ball at his feet then if he's this good at defending. He's really good at it. Jordan Doherty, I think, is possibly the player of the season so far.
Yeah.
He's almost taken Paul Hanlon's crown of being kind of second in the running for man of the match every week. And that's what so you've got that back three. They can kind of push on, and Fordyce is really, really good in the middle. And when he does step out in the middle, he can play decent passes. We've seen the balls he was knocking over the top at Firhill for McMillan to run on to. Like, it's not like we've got three Sean McGinty's.
No.
And so Josh Ray has to bang the ball because he can't trust any of them to take a pass or turn. They're all really good at that.
Yeah.
And then, as we've already said a couple of times, when Doherty goes, when he kind of pushes on that right-hand side, and then Rose going, and then Chin's on the scene as well, that looked like our best opportunity to really create something down that side. But it felt like we were doing that almost as like a second choice, like a plan B, rather than that being the whole thing. I just don't think we play our own strengths sometimes. And that, as I say, it meant that the game was just always in the balance, quite literally, obviously, it finished nothing each. And we really get away with one at the end here.
Yeah. It would have been the most over goal ever to concede as well, to be fair, because it was horrible.
Yeah, it was. So Chris Mockery's, after a kind of fairly kind of scrappy build-up, Chris Mockery gets a shot away that, if this goes in, I don't know how much Aaron Reid is going to claim that he meant it. He's sort of half falling, gets his head onto his own teammate's shot, and headers the ball down into the ground, where it then kind of bounces back up and comes off the underside of the bar, with Josh Ray completely stranded. The real kind of heart and mouth stuff, really, there.
It was. I was going to say, just a note to do the corrections corner. Can he have been Mockery? Because he was actually the one I was going to mention. That was the substitution that confused me the most. He took him off after 70 minutes and brought Aaron Reid on, which made no sense to me, because Mockery was the only player in that team who looked capable of doing anything. I thought he looked really good. I'm not correcting you in the sense of I know who it was.
No, you're quite right.
I've not a clue. But it was more the fact that he actually, I thought he looked really good yesterday, Mockery. He was a bit of a thorn in terms of dropping in, taking the ball, his touch and his control. I thought he was one of the few players that actually showed a bit of quality in the game. And actually, go back to the point you were making about the back three, I thought Fordyce was brilliant yesterday. I thought he was absolutely superb. He did all of his defensive stuff so easily and so calmly. He won all of his headers, and it wasn't just headering the ball into nowhere. There was always a purpose to what he was doing, and I thought he kind of stepped out with the ball at his feet and did pretty well. But it was just one of the games where, like you said, like we didn't play to our strengths. But again, I come back to the wing backs. No crosses in the first half. I don't understand it. I don't get what the purpose of going with those two as wing backs was, if you're not gonna cross the ball in. Like, yeah.
So I think Rowe in particular, I can see the argument for, because of what he gives you at set pieces.
Yeah.
Because actually, a couple of them, both attacking and defensive corner kicks, where he gets the first contact.
Yep.
And you could see as well the couple of times kind of big crossfield passes that Matthews hit a couple. And it's one of these, when you look at the height of J. Rowe, he's got a decent touch as well.
Yeah.
You think, like, I can stick a 60-yard ball over because as long as it's relatively near him, you got a good chance of keeping this in.
Yeah.
And
he did. There was a few that were really wayward that he kept in, actually.
That's it. And he's a good option with it. I'm quite openly, I like what I've seen from J-Ro.
Yeah.
I don't think he particularly had a great game yesterday, but a lot of that, I think, is he wasn't kind of used particularly well. Same goes for Ewan Wilson, although he seemed a little bit more
reluctant,
naturally kind of reticent to get forward.
Yeah.
Just a point on Callum Fordyce, actually, just because right at the end, quite literally, end of the game, it was when the whistle went. There was a bit of kind of booing in the away stand, which I don't kind of agree with under any circumstance, really. I don't think I've ever booed an oversight. Although obviously people do. It just so
I have once,
to be...
I have to say, St Mirren away under Yogi. That was my one.
Absolutely.
I think I'm entitled to that, though.
Yeah. I mean, listen, there are levels to it, I'm sure.
No, yesterday was that.
I think there is quite clearly a number of people who it's just a default position if you're getting beat, like regardless of actually the kind of wider context. I just happened to be looking directly at Callum Fordyce when the final whistle went, and I mean, he didn't make a big deal of it, but he basically just said the word booing and just kind of shook his head a little bit.
Yeah,
and I was like, certainly I wasn't booing. I wouldn't have booed that. I wouldn't agree with anyone who did. My frustration with it, though, was really down to the way that we approached the game. Because actually, I don't have... Again, I think this is where we differ on this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really have much of an issue with the kind of players as such. I certainly don't think there was any lack of effort, any lack of endeavour or attitude or anything like that at all. And I think if I was in Callum Fordyce's shoes, I would have the same opinion that he clearly did, which is we've dominated this game, we've all knocked our pans in, we've had a lot of chances, just so happens none of them went in. But at the same time, I don't think that's a good result.
No,
and I don't think we gave ourselves the best chance of getting a good result with the way that the game was approached. Even like personnel, I don't really have an issue with it. It's not a case of like... I mean, I think Sean Byrne would have helped.
Yeah,
but even then, that probably would have had to have come with a kind of different approach. I think you would have to approach the game differently and then use Sean Byrne to do it. I mean, obviously we said at the start, it's not a good point as things stand. Given the games we've had so far, we're second in the league.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think we're the second best side in the division?
Oh, there's a question. On yesterday, no, not even close. Over the piece, yeah, I mean, I would go back to Friday night watching St Johnstone play against Dunfermline, and I know, like, again, you if you just look at the result and you look at the last 3 minutes of that game, the story of Dunfermline's hard luck and how they really ran them close and all the rest of it might be what comes out. But St Johnstone did to Dunfermline in the first 20 minutes on Friday night. They didn't do to us the week before. Like, they absolutely steamrollered them. How they weren't... I mean, I think it was 90 seconds was the first, like, how did you not score moment in that game? And there were a few. Never felt like that. I mean, obviously, I wasn't at the game last week. I mentioned that midweek, but I'd watched it on Wraith TV. Just never had a feeling like we were getting battered. Never really felt like we were, particularly taking the game to them and making it a huge contest. But I felt like we were at least holding our own, and certainly came away from that game feeling like, do you know what I mean? I don't think they'll have much like tougher games in that this season. We certainly didn't make it easy for them. Well, in terms of the goals, we did a wee bit to an extent, the mistakes that were there. But over the piece, I felt like the way that St Johnstone kind of not sat in, that's maybe too far, but they certainly didn't go swashbuckling against us. I think they showed us an element of respect. And I think that comes with the results that we've had. I mean, we've gone down to Ayr and won, and I know they've had a poor start to the season, but gone down to Ayr and won. We went toe-to-toe with Partick, and barring a mistake, get out of there with a point. Won the Fife Derby pretty comfortably. Like, yeah, we maybe are up and around it, but I think we're in a bunch at the moment. You know, to be there's a clear best team in the league at the moment, without a shadow of a doubt. And then there's a bunch of us that are in and around it. But the reason that there's a bunch of us in and around it is because each and every one of those teams has that performance in them, but also has yesterday in them. Like, there's no other team other than St Johnstone that look like they're going to have the consistency to kind of really mount a run. Do you know what I mean? I think we're going to be the team this season that has 3 or 4 good games, a couple of crap games, and then back to 3 or 4 good games. That's what I'm hoping anyway. And then it'll be, whereas last season, we were 3 or 4 really bad games, followed by a decent performance, and then you'd go back to crap for a few weeks, and then you'd have a couple of decent performances, particularly at the beginning of the season. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I think my wider point from yesterday, like, I agree completely. We didn't set up in a way. We didn't set up in the best way we could have. I think you're fair on that. But although I definitely don't agree with the booing, I do think a lot more of it lands at the players for me. And not through lack of effort or endeavour. I think you're 100% spot on with that. They caught their panning. It just wasn't working. Nothing was kind of coming off. Like I say, some really poor touches and overhit crosses, and just that real lack of kind of quality, like I keep saying. But I think the players have to kind of take a bit of ownership for that. And I don't think it's a failing on their part. We're all human. It happens. You have games where you're maybe trying a bit too hard, actually. I don't know. But second best team in the league. I don't know. What do you think?
I think there's a couple of factors to it. So one is obviously that you don't put points on the board in a vacuum. So the other teams have not had their own kind of troubles to seek, almost.
Yeah.
As you say, we expected Ayr to be right up there. They've started really poorly. Ross County even more so than that.
Yeah.
So that kind of goes for everyone. My concern, I suppose, maybe it's silly to talk about concerns when we're second, joint second on points with Arbroath, I should probably say, who we play next week. But I mean, Arbroath could be 5-0 last week. Like, it's a funny division. My concern, as I say, is that we're almost uniquely set up to play the teams around us. Like, I think we'd quite happily play. I'd say the teams around us, probably in terms of like budget, as opposed to teams literally around us in this kind of early stage of the league. Like, we're quite happy to go toe to toe with Ayr United, Dunfermline, beat both of those.
Partick. Yeah.
Even Thistle, although we lost that game, it felt like an odd goal in 5 game.
Yeah.
They deserve to win it on the day, but you don't have to change a huge amount for that to finish the other way. Even the Morton game that we won, I don't think we played well. And I don't think it was remarkably different from yesterday.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the same frustrations were there, but the fact that we did get a goal obviously changes the complexion of it. The Queen's Park game is very, very similar. With that one, they get a goal early, we have to pull it back. But particularly given that one was at home, it doesn't feel like we're set up to kind of go and actually impose the game on anybody. Next week's going to be really interesting to see how that looks. Arbroath have been, as we've said, very up and down. Beat 5-0 by Dunfermline last week. Does
it feel like we can do that, eh?
Yeah, basically. And obviously, I hope to be absolutely proven wrong in that, but we just don't seem to have that, especially if we were going to Gayfield. We don't look like we've got that kind of go to a team who you should be, on paper, better than, and actually then just go play your game, force them to adapt, and then just let your quality show over the course of the game. Instead, we seem to sort of skip the first two steps and just bank on the quality shown over the course of the game, which sometimes will work for you, sometimes it won't. We got away with it. We won the game at Capello. Potentially there was that disallowed goal. Yesterday could have easily gone the other way with that one in the last minute.
Yep.
Where actually we probably played better, created more chances, but just not with any great conviction. So, yeah, it will be interesting to see. I think it's something that we've had all along, really, with Barry Robson. We ended the season really, really well. A really good run. But for whatever reason, just never quite swept everybody along in the same way that you'd almost expect, given the results on paper.
Yeah.
There's a lot of the right puzzle pieces there. It's whether they'll finally all come together or not. And I suppose only time will tell with that. And certainly, as you say, we'll be back later in the week and we'll talk about Arbroath in a little bit more detail and see how we think that'll go. Any kind of final thoughts before we leave it for today?
No, not really. It's been a really depressing hour, Duncan, I have to say. So it was just kind of
quite a depressing game.
It really was. And the thing is, I think that's the thing we've got to come back to. We didn't lose. And maybe that's it.
Yeah. That was, so we kind of glossed over by Rob's interview there, because I didn't think there was anything particularly noteworthy in it, really.
Yeah.
Did say he's like something about we're not the kind of team that would ever come here for a point, and we know we were going for it, and that was how we nearly lost that goal at the end. I didn't really feel like...
No.
We only made
I also
two
didn't
subs.
agree with what was the analogy used? If it was a boxing match, they'd have stopped it? Nah. Sorry, Barry.
No.
Not giving you that. Not giving you that in the slightest.
You just stretch that metaphor to, if it was a boxing match, would we have won on points? Maybe?
Possibly.
Possibly
if you had one of the judges in your pocket, maybe, aye.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just didn't... I suppose, sorry, people will be shouting at us to talk about subs a little bit more. Because we basically just ignored it. So, as he made two subs, he put Richard Chin on at half time, he put Lewis Vaughan on with 20 minutes to go.
Yep.
Were you, last 10 minutes, looking for anybody, shouting for anybody?
I must admit I wasn't, but only from the point of view that nobody that he could have brought on in the last 20 minutes have I seen play football yet. So I'm not kind of going, oh man, we need to get that Josh Gentles on. He's a threat. I've no idea what Josh Gentles is like. Josh Gentles might be the answer. I don't know. That Nisio or whatever he's called might be the answer. I don't know. And so there was a lot of shouting in the section I was in. There was a group in particular who were just screaming about staunch things, and I'm like, we're not really helping here. Like, do you know, like, had we been playing that last 15, 20 minutes and not created anything, yes, I would be screaming for substitutions. But there was kind of stuff happening, and a lot of it was due to the fact that we were peppering the goal. That's probably the best way we can put it. But chucking it in the mixer and seeing what comes out. And they were getting deeper and deeper and deeper. It did frustrate me, though, that he I don't know whether it was a deliberate thing or not, but like I say, I don't think we put a cross in the box until Lewis Vaughan was on the park. And I'm like, I don't know he won a header, but what are we doing crossing the ball into Lewis Vaughan against McGinty? Like, so maybe the subs were needed.
And this, I think the problem with it is, as you say, certainly I've not seen these guys play either. So, no. Kind of just purely because he's young, I assume Josh Gentles is quick. Maybe.
Just logical.
Paul Inseo seems to be very tall.
He does.
That's
from the team photo.
Him. So it's difficult to say, he should have been on the park. Like, maybe he's hopeless. I've got absolutely no idea. I've never seen him. No choice but to trust the manager's judgment on that. In terms of kind of flipping it on its head and like, who would you take off? I think that's where it's really a case of, for me, you kind of have to leave Easton on because he's the one who's most likely to win the penalty that we score from. Vaughan's only been in the park 10 minutes, really. At that point, I see me came on with 20 minutes to go. You're not going to take Chin off. You only came on at half time, and he looked very, very dangerous. I think broadly, it's either you take one of Matthews or Brown out, and then it's, well, so is that to put another striker on, or is that to put in Sean Byrne or Paul Incio? Other than that, it's like, do you just take Ewan Wilson off? Put Stevenson on? Like, I mean, you could, but you're not exactly. That doesn't scream match winner. Like, you put it that way.
The other thing is, it's 0-0. We're not 2-0 down with 20 minutes to go and having to chase a game. So, do you know what I mean? If you take a midfielder off, I mean, the only way I look at that, and actually it never occurred to me until you were talking through it, you take Brown and Matthews off, and you put Byrne on and a striker. So Byrne offers you that slightly more solid defensive cover to throw on that extra striker. But you're throwing on an extra striker at 0-0. If they'd went up the park and that had went in, he'd be getting slaughtered.
Yeah. I think the argument for Gentles is probably you put him on instead of Vaughan and you play a different way. And you try and get in behind, and you don't just bang long balls to them. Which again, that's a different question, really.
Getting in behind's difficult when they're that deep, though. Like
happened once, and
and it happened in a turnover.
I've seen.
Do you know what I mean? It happened from them losing the ball 10 yards in front of their back line, and I think just knocking it through.
You have to assume, unless you were watching Alloa last season or Rangers children, that Josh Gentles is in theory Finlay Pollock.
Oh, yeah.
He's your quick option that we don't otherwise have. He's your I don't know. I assume he's 17 or whatever, so he's quicker than Jack Hamilton or Lewis
He's
Vaughan.
like 6'3" or something. So my thinking is he's a target. Maybe he's not. This is exactly it.
We probably should be talking about it. We've got no idea.
No clue.
Aye. So, and I think this is the problem is if we get a game like that yesterday and you get to 2 or 3-0 up, maybe you start to see some of these guys. We've not had that opportunity. We've not had that luxury at any point. So, aye, nothing in there there wasn't like a big red light flashing above my head screaming we need to get X, Y, or Z on. Listen, I know if you played that game again today, would one of those chances go in? Maybe. Would it be one of the 3 chances the Rovers had cleared off the line? Would it be the one that Airdrie had off the bar? Who knows? But yeah, overall a frustrating afternoon. I think we can probably agree on that. Right, we'll leave it there. We will be back later in the week. We'll look forward to the visit of Arbroath in a little bit more detail. Quite when that'll be, nobody knows, but I'm sure it will be at some point. Thank you, Blair, for joining me. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We will speak to you again then. Goodbye.